Let me tell you something most men will never hear in their lifetime. Attraction is not a mystery, not if you understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be a model, and you definitely don't need to be Mr. Nice Guy. Because despite everything we've been told, women aren't complicated. They're just tuned into something most men never bother to understand. It's not about your job. It's not about your car. It's about the energy you bring into a room. It's about how grounded, calm, and attuned you are in the moment. Women respond not to appearance, but to emotional signals, the ones you don't speak, but that your body and mindset broadcast every second you're near her. Now here's the part that changes everything. You don't have to manipulate her. You don't need cheap lines. You don't need tricks. But what you do need is to shift the way you carry yourself, the way you think, and the energy you emit. This video is not about pickup tactics. It's about understanding the psychological triggers that women respond to naturally and using them in a way that's authentic, powerful, and deeply magnetic. These 7 principles I'm about to share with you, they're not gimmicks. They're calibrations, refinements to your presence, your inner clarity, and your external energy. And when you begin to embody them, you stop chasing women because they begin to feel pulled toward you. Not because you're perfect, but because you've stepped into something deeper, a grounded, purpose-driven, emotionally intelligent version of yourself. Here's the truth. Attraction is not about impressing her. It's about affecting her on a level even she can't explain. That's what most men miss. They try to get her attention with effort, volume, and validation. But the man who draws her in, he understands emotional resonance. He's not performative. He's present. He doesn't need to be the loudest voice, because his silence speaks volumes. This is what Stoic men understood for centuries. You don't chase influence. You become influential by mastering yourself. So if you've ever felt like you just don't get what women want, if you've ever watched another guy who doesn't even try and wondered why she lights up around him, this video is for you. Because when you understand her subconscious emotional language, and when your energy speaks that language without words, everything changes. Not just your dating life, but how you walk through the world. So get ready, because we're about to break down 7 subtle shifts that don't just spark attraction. They sustain it. You don't need to become someone else. You need to remember who you are, beneath the doubt, the noise, the overthinking. Let's begin. Shift 1. Ignore her looks, praise her mind. Here's a psychological truth that flips the script on everything you've been taught about attraction. If you want to stand out in her world, don't compliment her looks, compliment her mind. Now that may sound counterintuitive, especially in a world that places beauty on a pedestal. But let me ask you this. How many times do you think she hears, "You're beautiful," in a week? 10? 20? More? Now ask yourself, how many men have looked her in the eyes and said, "I love the way you think"? That's rare. And in today's world, rare is magnetic. Most men lead with desire. They mirror what they see. You're gorgeous. You're stunning. You're so hot. But here's the catch. When every man says the same thing, their words lose meaning. She doesn't feel seen. She feels scanned. And beautiful women? They're often the ones most starved for someone who values them beyond their appearance. This is where your power lies. This is where attraction shifts. Because when you choose to respond not to her looks, but to her thoughts, you flip the dynamic. You create what's called a value reversal. Suddenly, it's not you chasing her validation. It's her wondering, why isn't he reacting to what everyone else reacts to? She leans in. She becomes curious. She wants to know what you value. Why? Because you're no longer operating on the surface. You've just stepped into something deeper. Something feminine energy responds to instinctively. Emotional depth. Intellectual recognition. Presence without pedestal. Let me give you an example. She says something insightful in conversation. Most guys nod and wait for their turn to speak. You pause. You say, "That's actually a really sharp observation. Do you think most people miss that?" Boom, connection. Respect, interest, not because you flattered her, but because you noticed her. You valued what no one else took the time to see. That is where emotional intimacy begins. That is what builds obsession, not just attraction. Because here's the truth. What is rarely recognized becomes intensely desired. When you stop chasing her looks, she starts chasing your attention, because now she's wondering what it takes to earn your respect. Now she wants to be interesting to you. Now your attention becomes a reward, not a given. And from a Stoic lens, this is mastery. The Stoics taught us not to be swayed by appearances, not to be pulled by surface emotion or shallow desire, but to observe with clarity and choose with intention. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So when you focus on her thoughts, you're speaking directly to her essence. And when you speak to a woman's essence, you create a bond that no physical compliment ever could. Now, this isn't to say you should never tell her she's beautiful. Of course not. But beauty fades. Curiosity doesn't. The way her mind moves. That's something she's still sharpening, still building, still becoming. And when you acknowledge that, you don't just make her feel seen, you make her feel valued. So the next time you sit across from a woman you're drawn to, resist the urge to comment on her looks. Instead, catch the way she forms an idea. Notice the sharpness in her timing. Admire her perspective. And when you speak, let your words carry the weight of a man who is grounded, a man who is calm. A man who sees more than others do, because he listens deeper than most ever will. That's how you become unforgettable. Not by praising the obvious, but by recognizing the hidden. Shift 2. Pull away when she comes closer. Here's something most men never learn until it's too late. The moment she starts coming closer, you need to pull back, just slightly. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't that game playing? Shouldn't I be excited when she's finally investing? And yes, you should feel grateful. But here's the truth. If you mirror her enthusiasm too quickly, too completely, you kill the very thing that's drawing her in. Because what creates obsession is not certainty. It's tension. That psychological space of almost connection, where she feels you're within reach, but not entirely hers yet. That space, that's where curiosity lives. That's where longing grows. That's where her mind starts playing scenes of you over and over again. Let's break it down. She starts texting more, calling, asking questions, wanting to know where you are, what you're doing, who you're with. That's beautiful, but here's your move. Don't drown her interest with your own. Respond, yes, but slowly, calmly, deliberately. Why? Because obsession is fed not by answers, but by mystery. The more she knows she can have you at any moment, the less space her mind gives to you. You become predictable, safe, but not magnetic. But when you hold your center, when you remain still, even as she leans in, you trigger something far more powerful than attention. You trigger intrigue. She starts wondering, why isn't he reacting the way most guys would? Is he thinking of me too? Is he this composed with everyone? Now her thoughts return to you, even when you're not around. You've just become mentally sticky, without trying to force anything. And here's where Stoic wisdom comes in. The closer one gets to wisdom, the less one needs to react. Marcus Aurelius, paraphrased. In other words, the man who can stay centered in the face of emotion. The man who doesn't rush forward just because something feels good. That's the man she trusts and can't stop thinking about. Pulling away when she comes closer isn't rejection. It's restraint. It's pacing. It's giving her space to miss you while showing her you're not desperate. Let me give you an example. Let's say she texts you, "I've been thinking about you today." Most men jump in. "Me too. I miss you." And sure, that feels good in the moment. But what if you paused? What if you waited a little and then said, "I like hearing that. Let's talk tonight when I'm free." That's calm. That's composed. That's leading the emotional rhythm, not following it. And the result? She starts to invest more, because now every interaction with you feels earned, intentional, meaningful. That's what makes her stay up at night thinking, where do I stand with him? And the moment that question enters her mind, you've already entered her heart. But here's the warning. Don't do this from insecurity. Do it from strength. If you're pulling away because you're afraid, bitter, or trying to punish her, she'll feel it. Women are emotionally intuitive. But if you're calm, secure, and still moving with kindness, she'll feel safe in your presence, even when you create space. Because she won't read it as distance. She'll read it as leadership. So here's the invitation. The next time she leans in, stay centered. Don't rush to fill the space. Let the tension build, because the man who holds his ground as desire rises is the man she keeps coming back to. Not because he begged, not because he chased, but because his presence made her feel something deeper, the power of almost a... Shift 3. Trigger subtle jealousy the right way. There's a delicate line between manipulation and magnetism, and most men, they never learn how to walk it. Because when we talk about jealousy, most people think of pain, games, and power struggles. But that's not what we're doing here. We're not talking about hurting her. We're talking about activating something primal, something subtle, something that quietly whispers in the back of her mind. Other women see what I see in him, and I could lose this if I'm not present. That, my friend, is the art of subtle jealousy. Not to punish her, not to play games, but to remind her, gently, respectfully, that you are a man of value, and that value is recognized. Here's the psychology behind it. When we feel like something is fully ours and always available, our minds begin to take it for granted. But when we feel even the slightest possibility of losing it, suddenly it becomes more precious, more vivid, more urgent. It's not manipulation, it's human nature. This is what creates emotional investment. Not constant reassurance, but healthy uncertainty. Let's say she knows you're kind, loyal, attentive. That's great. But if she never senses that you're wanted by others, that your attention is valuable, and others notice your presence, then the spark dulls. But now imagine this. You're talking to her, giving her space to speak, making her feel seen. Then someone else, another woman, walks past and lights up when she sees you. She laughs at your joke, maybe compliments your voice. You smile, politely, and go right back to the woman you're with. What just happened? You didn't cross a line. You didn't flirt. You didn't try to provoke. You simply let the world reflect your value, and she saw it. That moment sticks with her. Because now, the script has flipped. You're no longer the man trying to win her over. You're the man who others desire, but who chooses her. That creates a rush. a feeling that says, I have something rare, I don't want to lose it. Now, let's be clear. This only works when you do it with respect. If you force it, if you try to make her jealous by chasing attention, it backfires. Women can smell insecurity from across the room, but when your energy is calm, present, and magnetic, they feel it. And more importantly, she feels it. The Stoics have a lesson here too. Don't show off your value, simply be valuable. Epictetus, paraphrased. You don't need to announce anything. You don't need to boast. You just need to carry yourself like a man who others naturally respond to, because you're grounded, aware, and whole. So how do you do this? Build a life that interests you and others. Stay socially relaxed, conversational, humble, but seen. Let other women notice your presence without chasing theirs. And when they do, stay rooted in your frame. And when she watches it happen, she doesn't think he's playing games. She thinks, damn, other women see it too. That's when desire deepens. That's when she becomes invested. Not because she's scared, but because she's reminded of your value. So here's your invitation. Let others feel your energy, but give your full presence to the one woman who's earned it. That's how you build trust and desire. Respect and mystery, stability and emotional fire. Because the man who is admired by many, but chooses with discernment. That's the man women don't forget, not because he made her jealous, but because he made her feel lucky. Shift 4. Be willing to walk away, never cling. Here's something few men ever master, but the ones who do. They change the way women see them forever. Be willing to walk away, not as a threat. Not as a power play, but as a deep, calm expression of self-respect. Because the moment you become emotionally dependent on a woman's presence, you lose the very gravity that attracted her in the first place. And the paradox, the moment she senses you don't need her, is the moment she starts wanting you more. Let's break this down. Too many men fall into the trap of clinging. They get a taste of connection, of chemistry, of attention, and suddenly they start overcompensating. They reply instantly. They agree to everything. They stop leading, they start pleasing, and slowly, without realizing it, they abandon their power. Because here's the brutal truth. Neediness repels, while self-respect pulls her in. Women don't crave a man who's afraid to lose them. They crave a man who knows he'll be just fine if he does. Why? Because that man is stable. He's grounded. He's not emotionally shaken by silence, delay, or disagreement. And in a world full of emotionally reactive men, that's rare. Here's a simple test. Would you stay in a dynamic that chips away at your standards just because you're afraid she might leave? If the answer is yes, you're not in a relationship. You're in a slow-motion collapse of your self-worth. And women, they feel it. They know when they can push a boundary and you won't walk. They know when your love is desperate, not disciplined. And that awareness doesn't create safety. It creates disinterest. But when she looks at you and sees a man who's kind, steady, attentive, but who will walk away if his value is not met? That's when she starts asking herself, what do I need to do to keep his attention? You've just shifted the frame. Now she's invested. Not because you demanded it, but because you made it earnable. And that's the Stoic way. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Epictetus. You don't beg for love. You don't cling for attention. You lead yourself. And if someone wants to walk beside you, they choose to freely. This isn't cold. It's not emotionless. It's emotional maturity. It means you care deeply. but you never let that care override your core. It means you can love fully, without losing yourself in the process. And that balance, that's what she craves. So what does this look like in practice? You state your needs calmly. You enforce boundaries without anger. You give space when energy feels off, without guilt. And if something feels consistently misaligned, you leave, not as punishment, but as protection of your peace. And when you walk away, you don't chase. You don't beg. You don't look back with resentment. You walk like a man who knows. Your value doesn't shrink just because someone couldn't hold it. And the result? She starts seeing you differently, not as someone to test, but someone to respect. Because you've shown her that your heart is open, but your standards are not negotiable. That's how you become the man she obsesses over. Not because you tried to hold her tighter, but because you held yourself first. So here's your challenge. Never fear the silence. Never fear the distance. Never fear walking away if your soul tells you to. Because when you stop clinging, you make space for real connection. And in that space, she'll either rise to meet you or reveal she was never meant to walk with you at all. Either way, you win. Shift 5. Don't let her fully figure you out. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you left a little silence in your story? When was the last time you let someone wonder about you, instead of explaining everything? Because here's one of the most overlooked truths in attraction. What's fully understood becomes emotionally neutral. But what remains mysterious, that keeps her leaning in. This isn't about being cold. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about cultivating the one thing that sustains desire longer than looks or charm: curiosity. Most men, when they like a woman, they try to be transparent. They overshare. They over-explain. They try to make everything known right away. Why? Because they're afraid she'll lose interest if she's unsure. But ironically, certainty kills attraction. The moment she knows your every thought, your every plan, your every move, she stops wondering. And once curiosity dies, so does the pull. Think about it. What books do you keep reading? What movies hold your attention? What people stay in your mind? The ones who leave questions. The ones who surprise you. The ones who reveal just enough and then pull back. Women are emotional beings. They don't just want answers. They want adventure. They want to feel like something is unfolding. And when a man creates a sense of depth, when he gives her glimpses of who he is, but not the full map, he becomes unforgettable. Not because he's hiding, but because he's not performing. He's living. He's moving, he's quietly complex, and that's rare. Let me be clear, this is not about being fake. It's not about being vague or evasive. It's about being rooted in your life so deeply that you don't need to explain every corner of it. You allow her to discover you over time, layer by layer. And in that process, you keep her emotionally invested. Here's a real-world example. Let's say you go on a date. She asks, "What do you do for fun?" Most men list everything. I lift weights, I write, I cook, I surf. You? You say, "I've got a few things I enjoy." Some of them would surprise you. Then move the conversation forward. You've just planted a seed. And guess what? She'll think about that later. She'll start imagining she'll want to know more. That's pull energy. You're not forcing attention. You're earning it through mystery. And here's where Stoicism quietly enters the frame. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water. Marcus Aurelius. Still, present, calm, but never fully readable. When she can't figure you out completely, when she knows you're solid but not simple, She starts thinking about you when you're not even in the room, and that's how obsession begins. Not through explanation, but through energy. So here's your challenge. Stop narrating your life. Let there be pauses in conversation. Let her ask questions before you offer answers. Share with intention, not compulsion, because the man who reveals just enough, who isn't in a rush to be understood, is the man she thinks about when she lies awake at night, not because he tried too hard, but because he let her mind do the chasing. So don't be the open book she reads once and puts down. Be the story she returns to again and again, because every chapter reveals something deeper. Shift 6. Trigger her competitive side. Here's something you need to understand about women, and it has almost nothing to do with what you say. When she sees that other women enjoy being around you, something deep and instinctive kicks in. No, this isn't about making her jealous. It's not about showing off. It's about awakening a very real part of human nature, the desire to stand out and secure value. This is where her competitive side comes online. Not in a toxic, dramatic way, but in a subtle, emotional way. Because whether she admits it or not, every woman, on some level, wants to feel that she's the one who captured something others noticed, but couldn't keep. That's the power of social proof. That's the power of effortless presence. Let's break it down. When she sees that you're calm, confident, and naturally engaging with others, especially with other women, her brain starts working in the background. Why do they like being around him? What is it about him that makes people lean in? Am I as connected to him as they are? Now you've shifted the emotional frame. She's no longer just enjoying your attention. She's wondering how to keep it. She's becoming invested. But here's the key. This only works when it's subtle, when it's natural, when it's rooted in presence, not performance. You don't need to flirt with other women. You don't need to brag or act overly charming. In fact, trying too hard has the opposite effect. It looks insecure. But when you're just you, grounded, light-hearted, generous with your attention, and other women genuinely respond to that energy, that's when she feels the shift. That's when the question enters her mind. Am I standing out to him? And the moment she starts wondering that, her emotional investment deepens. Because now, she wants to win you. She wants to feel chosen. And not because she earned it through effort, but because she inspired it through connection. This is what Stoicism teaches us in relationships. Don't waste your time on things outside your control. Focus on being excellent in your own character. You don't control how people react to you, but you can control the kind of energy you bring into every room. You can cultivate a calm confidence that people notice. You can be socially present without being performative. You can hold space, listen deeply, speak with intention, and when you do that, others notice, including her. Let's use a simple real-world example. You're at a dinner. You're not the center of attention, but you're fully present. You smile. You ask thoughtful questions. You tell a story that makes the table laugh. One woman touches your arm lightly when she laughs. Another smiles when you make eye contact. You're not chasing anyone. You're just being... And the woman you're with, she notices everything, not in jealousy, but in quiet reflection. He doesn't need to chase. Others come to him, and yet he's here with me. That's where connection turns into desire. That's where desire evolves into commitment. Because now you've flipped a switch. You're no longer the man who needs to be chosen. You're the man she's now subtly trying to win. But remember, this only works when you're not faking it, when you're not using women as props to manipulate another. It works when your energy is aligned, respectful, and rooted in abundance. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to show up, calm, confident, and socially awake. So here's your takeaway. Be magnetic by being genuinely engaged in social settings. Build real connections, not to provoke, but to express who you are. Let your value be witnessed, not shouted. Because the man who is admired by many, but remains focused, grounded, and selective, that's the man women don't just want to meet. That's the man they want to keep. And in a world of men who try to gain approval, be the one who naturally invites competition. Not with ego, but with energy. Shift 7. Give attention, then take it away. There's a reason why silence, when used right, speaks louder than words. And there's a reason why attention, when used wisely, becomes powerful. Let's talk about a concept that turns ordinary men into unforgettable ones. Give your attention, then take it away. Sounds simple, but done well, it creates an emotional experience most men never access. Why? Because most men overgive. They shower her with compliments. They reply instantly. They validate constantly. And in doing so, they become what every Stoic warned us not to become: predictable, passive, powerless. You see, when something is always available, it fades into the background. Even water, the most vital resource on Earth, gets taken for granted when it's pouring from every faucet. And attention? That's emotional oxygen, especially for women. So when you give it freely, constantly, without boundaries, it loses its edge. It stops being a gift and becomes a background hum. But when you offer your attention with intention, when you're fully present in a moment, listening, observing, offering a compliment that actually means something, she feels it. And then you pull away. Not coldly, not as a game, but naturally. You go back to your purpose. You give space. You focus inward on your path, your work, your stillness. And suddenly, that attention you gave, it becomes rare. It becomes valuable. It becomes something she craves more of. She doesn't just want your words. She starts looking for your presence. She starts asking herself, when will he turn back toward me? What's he thinking about? Why does it feel like something's missing when he's not fully locked in? This dynamic, my friend, is what I call the pendulum of presence. It's not manipulation. It's emotional leadership. Because when you give with full heart and withdraw with full purpose, you teach her that your attention isn't a reflex. It's a choice, and choices hold weight. Let's bring it back to Stoicism for a moment. Epictetus once said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." When she experiences your attention as scarce, her opinion of it changes. It's no longer something she expects. It becomes something she earns. And when something is earned, it becomes meaningful. This is the energy of a man who leads without chasing, a man who gives fully, but never clings. A man who knows his attention is his power and uses it wisely. Let's make this real with an example. You meet a woman, you hit it off. She's laughing. You're attentive, warm, charming, but never overwhelming. You compliment her, not her looks, but her perspective. You're fully present. And then you end the night gracefully. No endless texting. No emoji overload. Just, "I enjoyed this. I'll see you soon." Then silence. She checks her phone. Nothing. She replays your words. She smiles to herself. She wonders, is he thinking of me? And that wondering, that's the beginning of emotional attachment. Because it wasn't just your attention that moved her. It was the rhythm of it. Here's the formula. Give deep, present, meaningful attention. Then step back into your mission, your solitude, your discipline. Let her feel the absence. She'll chase not because she's insecure, but because she felt something rare, and rare things spark desire. And this is the paradox. When you stop giving attention like it's free, it becomes priceless. So here's your challenge. Don't smother. Don't vanish. Lead with rhythm. Show her your presence is a privilege, never a guarantee. Because the man who understands this balance, who doesn't fear the silence, who honors his attention like a treasure, that's the man she can't stop thinking about. That's the man who becomes unforgettable. Shift 8. Use silence with intention. Silence. We often think of it as empty space, a gap, a void between moments. But in the hands of a grounded man, silence becomes strategy. It becomes presence in its purest form. You see, after you've built connection, after you've created moments of warmth, of emotional resonance, the most powerful thing you can do next is nothing. No follow-up, no need to overexpress, no instant reply to every ping on the screen. Just stillness, and here's why this works. We live in a world that hates silence. People fill every pause with noise, texts, emojis, constant updates, and shallow attention. But silence? It cuts through all of that. It makes people feel something. Especially her. After a moment of shared depth, whether it's a powerful conversation, laughter, or a look that lingers, your silence becomes loaded. It's not absence. It's presence at a distance, and that's what makes it magnetic, because when she doesn't hear from you right away, when you let that moment breathe instead of flooding it with more, she starts to lean in. She replays the interaction. She fills in the silence with curiosity. Is he thinking of me? Why hasn't he reached out yet? Was that moment as meaningful to him as it was to me? And now, your attention becomes a form of emotional currency. She values it more because it's no longer guaranteed. This is the paradox. When you give space, you actually pull her closer. But let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation. This is about intentional leadership. It's about being a man who isn't ruled by emotional impulse. A man who doesn't need to fill every pause with validation. A man who knows that stillness speaks volumes. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." That calm mind, that's what silence reveals. And in romantic dynamics, it's the difference between being forgettable and becoming a mystery she wants to solve. Now, does this mean you should ghost her? No, not even close. There's a fine line between silence that creates magnetic energy and silence that creates insecurity or confusion. So the key here is timing and emotional presence. You've got to first lay the foundation. Be fully present when you're with her. Make her feel seen, heard, understood. And then, when the moment's right, you step back. You disappear into your world, your purpose, your discipline. You don't chase the next moment. You allow it to come. Because here's the truth. A man who's silent, but confident. Absent, but intentional. Distant, but emotionally grounded. That man doesn't lose her interest. He deepens it. He becomes the echo in her mind, the question that lingers. He creates a shift in emotional energy without saying a word. This is power. This is presence. This is emotional mastery. And in a culture that screams, the man who can hold silence leads. So let me ask you, can you sit in silence without fear? Can you hold space without filling it with noise? Can you trust that your stillness will speak louder than your words? Because the moment you can, you stop chasing her attention. and start commanding her respect. Shift 9. Gently break her emotional patterns. Let me tell you something most men never realize. Attraction isn't just about looks. It's not about money or even charm. Attraction is about energy disruption. It's about gently breaking the emotional patterns she's unconsciously stuck in. Here's the truth. Most women, especially confident, emotionally intelligent ones, have seen it all. The compliments, the chase. The emotional roller coaster most men ride when trying to win their attention. So when you show up and you don't follow the script she expects, that's when you become unforgettable. Let me give you a scenario. She tests you emotionally. Maybe she pulls back a little, says something edgy, maybe even flirts with a bit of drama. Most men, they fall into the trap. They react, they chase. They try to fix, but you take a breath. You stay grounded, you respond, not with validation, not with withdrawal, but with calm presence. That's emotional stoicism in action. It's what the ancient philosophers practiced, responding, not reacting, leading, not chasing, being the mountain, not the wind. When she expects you to validate her, you don't withhold, but you don't give blindly either. You offer presence. You see through the moment, not just into it. You stay composed, not because you're cold, but because you know your center. This is the man she doesn't know how to categorize. You're not the nice guy. You're not the arrogant one. You're something different. You make her feel something deeper, emotional safety through strength. Now let's go deeper. Why does this shift matter so much? Because every person, man or woman, runs on emotional patterns. We subconsciously recreate situations that mirror our past. But when someone steps into our life and doesn't respond the way we expect, that disruption creates awareness. It invites curiosity, and that curiosity, it's addictive. You don't do this with manipulation. You don't play games. You lead from a place of truth and calm power. You don't flinch when she pushes emotionally. You don't get needy when she pulls away. You don't try to impress, because you're not here to be liked. You're here to be real. Here's the key Stoic mindset. If you want to be respected, first, learn how to respect yourself in silence. A woman doesn't truly connect with the man who always agrees with her. She connects with the one who helps her feel seen beyond her patterns. When she gets loud, you get still. When she gets playful, you get intentional. When she tries to provoke, you become unshakable. And in doing so, you gently interrupt the rhythm she's used to and invite her into something deeper, something real. So ask yourself, can you stay calm in the face of chaos? Can you offer depth when she expects distraction? Can you show her not what she wants in the moment, but what her soul actually needs? Because when you do, you stop being one of many. You become the man she quietly replays in her mind, long after the moment has passed. And that, my friend, is not seduction. That is leadership. Shift 10. Be emotionally untouchable. There's one shift that separates ordinary men from the ones she never forgets. It's not about money. It's not about muscles. It's not about always knowing the perfect thing to say. It's about this: emotional self-mastery. The ability to stay calm when emotions run high, to hold your frame when the moment gets messy, to lead with presence instead of panic. That, my friend, is a magnetic trait, and very few men ever develop it. Let me tell you why this matters. Women will test you, not because they're cruel, but because they're wired to seek emotional safety. They want to feel that the man they're with won't collapse when life gets heavy. That he won't lash out, shut down, or blame them when emotions flare. That he can handle intensity, not just in her, but in the world. And let me be clear, these tests aren't always conscious. Sometimes it's a sarcastic comment. Sometimes it's mood swings. Sometimes it's silence. And in those moments, your reaction defines the relationship. Will you get defensive? Will you chase? Will you collapse into neediness? Or will you take a breath, hold your ground? Stay composed? Lead with quiet strength? The Stoics had a word for this. Apatheia, a state not of apathy, but of inner unshakability. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you embody this, she feels it. She feels safe. She feels intrigued. She feels like she can relax into your presence. Why? Because you're not trying to manage her emotions. You're not taking them personally. You're just there. Calm, grounded, present. This is what being emotionally untouchable really means. Not cold, not distant, but solid, like a lighthouse in a storm. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you stood in the middle of someone else's chaos and didn't flinch? When was the last time you allowed someone to be emotional without needing to fix it? When was the last time you led, not with words, but with stillness? Because here's the paradox. The man who can sit in silence and let emotion pass is the man who commands the deepest respect. And she may not say it out loud, but deep down she's thinking, finally, a man I don't have to worry about emotionally babysitting. That kind of man, rare, respected, and yes, deeply desired. So no, you don't need to fight to be understood. You don't need to explain yourself at every turn. You don't need to win every emotional moment. You just need to own your space, master your breath, hold your frame. And trust this, a man who doesn't chase peace, because he is peace, doesn't need to be loud. His silence speaks more than noise ever could. So, if you want to be unforgettable, be the man who stays grounded when everything else shakes. Because when you master your inner world, you become the anchor in hers. And in a world full of noise, that kind of presence is irresistible. Let's be clear. What you've just heard, these shifts, they're not party tricks. They're not manipulation. They're not about being a puppet master of someone else's emotions. They're about becoming the kind of man who doesn't just get attention, but commands it. Not with force, not with flash, but with depth, clarity, and presence. Because here's the truth. When you stop chasing attraction and start embodying alignment, everything changes. You move differently. You speak less, but say more. You stop performing and start radiating something far more powerful. Authentic masculine energy. The kind that doesn't seek permission. The kind that doesn't react to every test. The kind that stays rooted when the storm hits. Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." This work is the polishing. It's the friction, it's the transformation. So no, you don't need to memorize lines. You don't need to become someone else. And you definitely don't need to chase love, approval, or attention. You just need to remove what is false and return to what's essential. Let your presence be the proof. Let your peace be the attraction. Let your standards be the test, not your desperation. Because the man who masters himself doesn't just become attractive, he becomes unforgettable. She might not know why she thinks about you when you're gone, but something in her remembers how she felt around you. Safe, intrigued, drawn in. That's not a trick, that's not gay. That's transformation, and it starts here. If this spoke to something deep in you, don't just scroll on. Hit that subscribe button and join a movement of men reclaiming their strength through silence, purpose, and presence. Because becoming unforgettable isn't about being loud, it's about becoming undeniably aligned. Turn on notifications and lead your life with quiet power.